Welcome to Voices in Leadership, where leaders who connect, inspire, and grow come to share their stories live. I'm your host, Dr. Angela J. Buckley. Join us as we explore authentic leadership, gratitude, and the power of connection through powerful conversations with inspiring voices. Let's inspire, uplift, and elevate leadership that truly makes a difference together. Hello, Brad, dude. Welcome back to our next episode of Voices in Leadership. I am so glad that you have joined us as one of our guest experts today. I'm very, very much looking forward to hearing about how to become a leader in 30 days and learning more about temperament.
Dr. Buckley, it's a pleasure to be here, to be on your show. Really have watched some of your other podcasts, and it's a pleasure to be here today.
Brad, can you do me a favor really quickly and tell me what brought you to the concept of temperament?
Temperament. I really got started with that during the years that I was doing leadership training at NASA, at the Goddard Space Flight Center outside of Washington, D.C. Typically, we had people come in to do Myers-Briggs. That's kind of the most famous of the temperament tools, and there are many, many, many tools. But I found that, and my colleague at the time, Jim Harden, we found that when we would talk about, how many of you have worked with MBTI, and they all raised their hands, and these were scientists and engineers and administrators who had every test you can, imagine in their careers. We say, okay, well, how many remember what their score is? And then a few hands would come down. And then, okay, of the remaining hands, how many of you remember what that means? And then typically all the hands would come down. So we found that a lot of these instruments, 16 boxes, 9 boxes, like with Enneagram, people enjoyed them, they were fun, but they couldn't remember them and didn't really apply. So Jim and I developed a shorthand approach to it. Plus, Jim really liked to explore the idea of the shadow temperament. And so that experience got us involved and trying to simplify and make temperament more practical in its use for new and emerging leaders.
Now I'm going to go down a rabbit hole. I just want to understand, Brad, what is shadow temperament?
Yeah. Briefly, all of us at birth are born with the basic elements of temperament. We have simplified it down, and we called it earth, air, fire, and water to make it more easily remembered. Each one there's a continuum of behavior that goes through it. But let me give you the brief view of it. We're all born with all four within us, but they're in hierarchical order based on brain chemicals at birth. So if we look at a way to look at it is like dinner plates in a restaurant, 4 of them stacked on each other. It's an easy way to remember it. And whichever one it is for you that's your dominant of the 4, remember we have all 4 within us, that's your dominant temperament. And that's the one that how you view the world through that temperament. That's your most preferred way of looking at the world and the most preferred way of looking at behavior on the job or with your followers if you're a leader. That seems normal to you. Second plate down is your secondary temperament. And that one is also usually it's very supportive and agrees a lot with your dominant temperament. Many people think they have 2 dominants, but research would show no, we have 1 dominant and it's secondary that kind of supports the dominant. The third one is the tertiary temperament, and we're kind of neutral in that third plate in our stack. When we see that behavior, we don't really, it doesn't bother us one way or the other. The last one is, the fourth one is our shadow temperament. And that's our least preferred way of looking at the world. It's our least preferred way of looking at the behaviors of others. So for leaders, often, and especially with new leaders or emerging leaders, when they see behaviors representing their shadow temperament, it's often a negative response to it. And that's what gets us in trouble often when we see people that we see that behavior and we look at it as wrong, um, and it angers us or scares us.
Okay. Oh, yeah. All right. So I understand. So third, your tertiary is neutral,
Mhm.
and your quaternary or your shadow one is sort of like your trigger, really.
It is. And research had shown that there's a positive aspect as well as a negative aspect to it. In leadership training, we try to bring out both, but what people really want to know is what ticks them off. In fact, our first, Jim Harden and I wrote our first book on temperament is what makes you tick and what ticks you off, because it's that shadow that usually ticks you off. And so a lot of time is spent kind of looking at the shadow temperament. In fact, Ken Blanchard, one of the leadership
Yep.
gurus, he likes in our model, he liked our work on the shadow the most. In fact, Scott, his son, wrote the forward to our "Quick I Need to Be a Leader in 30 Days" book. So they've been very influential and have influenced kind of how we look at that as well.
I love the work that they do as well.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
yeah.
Okay. So what does that show up? You're a leader. Are you using, you said earth, you basically said the elements, right?
Yeah,
Earth, wind, air, and fire.
earth, air, fire, water, and they're in no particular order.
Okay.
Each one is different for us. I can walk through what they mean
Please.
quickly if that would help. Earth, if you're a dominant earth, typically means you view the world through a facts and figures orientation. You want to see the facts, you want the figures, and you want to be able to plan accordingly. You are, you're very traditional. You're the one that cares a lot for your institution and have a high expectation. Usually, uh, trust has to be earned by your followers for you. That's kind of the earth. So facts and figures. A lot of planning, a lot of reliance on deadlines and having people kind of toe the line in the organization. Errors, for an example, um, look at the world, look at their organization through the possibilities, the lens of possibilities. They're the visionaries. Don't work as well with people. Competence is their thing. If you're a dominant air, you look at yourself as a very competent person and you expect others to be competent, and they got to prove that competence to you, or else you're not looking at them probably the same as a peer or an equal. So that's earth, that's air. Fires are kind of your troubleshooter types. Uh, they also, like earths, look at facts and figures in an organization. But unlike the earths who want to plan and organize around those facts and figures, fires want to use them to manipulate and come up with unique solutions. And they enjoy it and they have a lot of fun as they try out things. And the way they solve a problem today may not be the same way they do it tomorrow. So
Mm.
sometimes if you're working for a dominant fire, a boss, manager, or supervisor, you kind of don't know what to expect. There's never a dull moment with that kind of a manager with that temperament. The last one, water. Waters are more like the heirs. They look at the possibilities as well in their organizations, but they look at it in terms of impact on people. They're the persons in the organization. They typically get along with all the other temperaments really well. They care about the impact of decisions on the workforce, opportunities in the workforce. They're the ones who care a lot. They're the ones who know supervisors, managers. They're the ones that know everybody by their name. They often know the family members. They know the dog's name sometimes. They're the ones that have the monthly birthday party and all that. And
Right.
so water. We all have all four of those in us. They're just in different hierarchical orders for us. And so One of those is your dominant temperament, and that's how you view the world, and you prefer to be looked at that way, and how you look at others, all the way down to your shadow temperament, which of the four, earth, air, fire, or water, and you look at that behavior and you sometimes have a problem with it.
So, do you mind explaining to me how you chose the elements and the relationships that with these, or like
Well,
how did Earth become your facts driven, and how
mhm,
did air, yeah,
yeah.
how did you
Well,
choose those
it,
groupings like that?
we certainly didn't invent it. This is work that's gone on in temperament for a long time. Uh,
Mm,
we chose those terms. I mean, those types or archetypes of behaviors are in, MBTI. They're in social sciences. They're in a lot of different social. I forget the name of that tool, Enneagram. They're all. It's all similar. We,
psychometrics,
yeah, we wanted to one choose elements that are basic to life. We have to deal with air, fire, and water all the time. It's kind of the essentials and that kind of composes life on this planet for us. And we
mm,
wanted to make it that we could remember them more easily. And then our whole point was to make people aware of our temperaments, especially the shadow temperament. Some people don't even recognize they have a shadow temperament.
sure.
And we wanted to then our goal was to develop all four, and we use them not as a way of judging people,
Right.
but as a self-awareness tool.
Awareness.
Well, every leader, one of the biggest tools that you need to have as a leader is self-awareness, and that is one of the tools. Emotional intelligence is another. Understanding power. There's a lot of different aspects of that, but for us, the idea of self-awareness is a critical and essential tool for a successful leader.
Okay. I was just curious if you had like a relationship, like a reason for calling this group water and this group air. So
They're the basic archetypes
that's the
that,
basic
but
archetypes.
that Freud and Jung developed. And we can't. I'd like to take credit for it, but I cannot.
Okay.
But
Okay.
that's it deals with the brain chemicals at birth that we don't really spend a whole lot of time talking about that, but that's where it comes from. And then a lot of work has been done. One of the fascinating studies on it was done by Dr. Helen Fisher in her book Why Him, Why Her. 45,000 surveyed people, international. She was doing it for Match.com to match dating personalities, the success. And she found that in the world, for Earth, about 29% of us have a dominant Earth uh, temperament. Uh, 16%, again, her figures, 16% in airs, uh, like 26% fires, and 29% in waters.
Okay.
So, in our when we would do these leadership classes, like at NASA, we throw everybody into their dominant temperament groups and talk about how they view the world and issues around leadership with them. And then we would leave half the group in their dominant temperaments and send people to their shadow groups. So if I'm a dominant water and my shadow is earth, I would go sit in that earth group with people with the dominant earth temperament. And that's where the most fun was. And I thought most learning came about. Why do you do that? Why do you have this? Why do you beat us up on progress reports? And they get a discussion going around that. So a lot to be learned, and we tell all. In fact, our books on leadership, it's all about trying to develop all four of your temperaments. I mean, we feel the most effective leader is the one who you can't tell what their dominant temperament is because they use all of them so well.
Right. Well, but it would be difficult to use your shadow if that's the one that's like
Yes,
kind of triggering for you, right?
it sure would. But what it does is being aware of your shadow stops you from knee-jerk reactions to behaviors you see on the job. Temperament is only, it's a 50, we estimate it's a 50%, influence on decision making. 40% is the choice that you make at the time, 10% on the circumstance that you're in. One of my training colleagues at NASA, Jeff Whitehead, developed a results model that talked about the mental maps that we carry around with us that has influence our education, our background, temperament, and other things. That when something happens, we might have a reaction to it that is not one that we really want. And so that model would say, okay, now what are you going to do? You're the new leader and you see an action. In fact, I'll give you an example. Jeff would have another participant stand across from him in the room and just say, and tell that person, I'm going to let's walk by each other. And when we do, say hello to me. And they would do that. And Jeff would look down, not respond. And then the discussion is, okay, what's with Jeff in that example? People say, well, he's a jerk. He walked by, he didn't even say hello, no eye contact. And so it gets into that mental map. Oh, what is our mental map? When we pass somebody in the hall, we say hello, we make eye contact. And what if you don't? Well, we could have that knee-jerk reaction to that, very negative. And so the idea is, okay, as an effective leader, do we have that knee-jerk reaction, or do we say, something's going on there. I need to ask questions. I need to take a deep breath. I should not make any rash decisions based on that example. I should learn more about, so we get into that kind of discussion on leadership, and those kinds of things come up. And especially when you see that kind of behavior that represents your shadow temperament, that's what happens. So we're trying to, as we develop ourselves and we read more about it, we're trying to prevent that negative reaction to seeing that.
Got it. Interesting. So, okay, let's pretend we're new leaders and we just learned about our temperament.
Mm-hmm.
You say, quick, I need to be a leader in 30 days. What are my first steps?
Well, one of the first steps is about self-awareness.
Okay.
And quick, I need to be a leader in 30 days. That came up because of our NASA experience. We found a lot of people were promoted because of the technical experience, right? But they don't have experience in supervising, managing, and kind of leading others.
That's the most difficult step, peer-to-peer to peer to supervisor, right?
No question about it. And so it's like, okay, now you're the supervisor, you're the team leader, you're the branch head, whatever you are. What do you do? Scott Blanchard in our foreword to our book said, oftentimes people don't get training in leadership or management for 6 to 7 to 8 years after they're on the job. But we learn our first year is when we kind of, trial by fire, and we kind of hang on to whatever techniques work for us in that first year. So it could be wrong. So that's why we felt we need to have a resource for folks so they could hit the ground running and not have to wait. So we did a book, and we thought, and we're going to do a live course, and it came just before COVID. And so that didn't happen. Our live course didn't happen, but the book that we wrote was for those who couldn't attend the live course as well. So we have a step-by-step for 30 days. We said, well, what can we do in 30? Our promotion is in 30 days. What can I do to get ready? And there's a variety of things. And we have a variety of things set for each of those, including readings and activities and exercises to do.
So so you're going to get the role, or so this is what you want to do ideally before you even get it.
Ideally,
Promotion becomes available
yeah,
August 1st, start today.
yeah. But
Okay.
for those even promoted yesterday, and they go, "Oh my gosh, what am I supposed to do?" This will be a handy resource for them to kind of get it together.
There are
Because if
quite a
they
few
don't,
battlefield promotions.
yeah, exactly right. Because we found what it leads to, micromanagement, right? The technical expertise over time, everybody knows your technical expertise dwindles. And if you don't have the managerial or leadership training or awareness, you revert back to what you know best, which was your technical skill, which means you're looking over people's shoulders with a dwindling expertise, which leads to usually poor morale, deadlines missed, or fights. It's the fight or flight or retire in place, especially with government workers that I've worked with. They just say, "Hey, I'm just gonna, sit there," and I turn stuff into my boss and let him decide what to do next, or they leave. So
Did you say retire in place?
yeah, that's the term that we used for
I
those.
mean, everybody calls it quiet quitting now, but
Yeah,
it's the same kind of thing. You're
same
holding
concept.
space and not doing the work.
Yeah, and it could lead to sabotaging as well, and especially it's challenging for those old timers like me who might sit in a place and say, "Hey, I'm only a few years, let these young people do this," and it's not a good role model, you know. And one of the things we want to teach is being a good role model for leaders, and that wouldn't be it. So there's a variety of things involved, and we think that if we had 30 days with somebody, that they could do a pretty good job of hitting the ground running.
There's a lot of growth happening in those 30 days. You'll be very tired when you get home at night.
Yeah, it's oftentimes just frantic. I mean, we've had folks who, it's that work-life balance goes out of whack for the new hires, especially, or those who feel incompetent. And if you are a dominant heir and you value competence, your own competence above all things, that is terrible. You have a lot of sleepless nights because you think you ought to be doing something and you're cramming to learn things. And remember, when you get a promotion like that, or you become a new team leader or manager, your followers expect you to be ready. They're not saying, "Hey, we'll catch up with you in 30 days." They expect you to be ready right now and deal with the problems that they have right now. So it's a challenge, no question.
So, in your book, what's the first thing they have to do?
We do a little self-assessment quiz
Okay.
in there to chat about that, give them some ideas. I'm sure they come in with many strengths, but there are some areas that maybe they haven't dealt with too much before. Certainly, temperament is always one of those things,
Mhm.
and right up we have them looking at that, and we talk about the difference with leadership versus management, and people today think it's pretty much the same, or the expectation is the same. And there are differences that we like to bring out up front, and oftentimes we think the book will bring up that. Also in our book, we are suggesting that they have at the end of each week have some kind of a mentor relationship with a friend, a colleague, a spouse, a religious person, somebody they can talk to about how they're doing and giving them some feedback on it. We think that's an important step in becoming a leader. But certainly, the dealing with leadership versus the expectation of management, we bring up the differences there too.
Brad, I often ask my clients when they talk to me about things, are you asking me for permission or are you asking me for advice? And the reason we say that is because if you're asking somebody who hasn't been in that role and they're not really qualified to give feedback, perhaps what you're asking for is agreement, which is basically permission. As opposed to if you're asking someone who's been in that role or is higher and can speak to it with some sort of authority, then you're asking for advice. Do you ever talk about who the right mentor is, or understanding the different roles of different people when you ask?
Yeah, it's not so much in our book about that. I think I just list the types of folks that you might think about,
Mm-hmm.
But I know in our leadership classes at NASA, we had an official formal mentor program that they had there with peers. But also we had them shadow other organizations. So if they were a scientist, we had them go sit with a technician type, and see how the organization is part of learning, understanding issues in the whole organization, because we think it's important to not be so focused just on your own bench or on your own team, that you need to have the bigger picture. And certainly, I think to be part of, to have your leadership hat on, you need to have a bigger picture, view of the world. So yes, it could be that if you're talking with somebody who doesn't know what you do technically or what your job is, it could be more of a checking in on your feelings, your attitudes, how you're dealing with the feedback that you're getting maybe on the job. So yes, it would be a different role depending on who that confidant is.
Mm. And how do you suggest that people um, digest the information based on the roles that they're asking, based on the role that that mentor or advisor holds in their life?
Um, we kind of ideally, and it's never ideal, but what we try to say is come go to such a session with questions in mind, that
Mm-hmm.
they're not there to give you a lecture on what you quote should be doing. uh, Mentors especially make that a bit, we have a little presentation with them coming in and talking to participants saying, you've got to come with us asking us what you want. What are you looking for? What level of feedback, are you looking for? Is it, have you seen this before in your experience? Or is it, am I doing the right thing? Yes or no? I mean, that's a very different kind of conversation, depending on the background of the mentor. So the idea is to get as many viewpoints as possible, and don't necessarily trust just one all the time. That's why we try to have people talk to peers, talk to a lot of different people up and down the organization to get a better understanding. So processing that information is the challenge, and oftentimes people are left to their own devices to analyze all that feedback. So in our courses, our live courses, we tried to have as many different resources as possible. So they're getting feedback from each other, from a work peer, somebody from another part of the organization who knows nothing about what they do, and kind of put it all together. Um, we had folks journal a lot, which they were unhappy to do most of the time. That was a tough one. That was a tough one to
Well, and you were working mostly with engineers, correct?
engineers and scientists and and administrative types. None of them really wanted to do it. Um, so it was like, okay, class, take out your journal, open it up. You've got 5 minutes, jot down kind of the 3 things that you learned today, kind of thing. You try to, we're not with them long enough at one time to kind of embed that as a positive thing. But it was a way that we used to try to get them to kind of come to a conclusion or analysis of what meant the most to them and what they heard from all these different resources of our class.
There's so much science that supports it, and yet it's a hard habit to develop.
Yeah.
It's a discipline. For sure.
Exactly. And do I have to use this book you gave me, this blank book, or can I use my computer? I mean, you can't believe the resistance, to it all.
Oh, Brad, I can believe.
Yeah. Right. And it's got
I can also commiserate, but I can absolutely believe.
a lot of benefits to it, but it's that's a tough one to pull out.
Yes. You said it and it made me think engineers are actually quite good scientists. They keep their lab notebooks. Like every experiment, everything they did, when they write everything down, they're so diligent. And to ask them to write a reflections journal, somehow we have to help them bridge that gap.
Yeah. That was a tough one. I mean, I think I was there 9 years doing that training at NASA. I don't think it ever got easier with that. There was resistance all 9 years, all different participants.
Well, yeah, which is fascinating because the bullet journal community is thousands, tens of thousands strong, and they've started their own groups that basically it's become more than what he ever intended it to be. But there are groups that are effectively self-therapy groups in the way they create their journals, and artistic in their approach, and daily, and people in there asking, what format do you use for this topic? What format do you use for that topic? So there are people out there that have truly embraced journaling as a part of their day.
Yeah, I'm sure that is true. I think our group, one of the things, it was a highly stressful organization.
Yep.
Stuff's going on all the time. Important, very important, projects and experiments and deadlines for rockets and things like that. And these are astrophysicists, and their challenge is one of the biggest challenges for them was work-life balance, because even going on vacation was tough because they felt if they weren't up on all the things going on, they could be losing in terms of promotion or importance to the organization. Yeah. So they, that was a real challenge. And of course, we would bring in supervisors and executives, and of course, they would say, no, we work-life balance is very important, and we want you to relax and don't call and the office and all this. And then they would leave, and everybody would say, yeah, that's not happening. Right. we cannot take a chance in losing our status.
I mean, I'm just going to say the PhD world is all about work and more work. So we do it to ourselves.
Sure.
We really do.
Exactly. Yeah.
So Brad, can I transition over to our gratitude section now? Are we at a good point?
Sure.
Okay. So before we do that, where can people find information about you?
I think the best way is through my website, braddude.com. And on that website, there are links to all 7 of my books. 6 are on leadership, and the latest one is a novel, but it kind of uses leadership principles in it. I have a temperament quiz for those of you who would love to know, what am I? Am I earth, air, fire, water? And it's a little fun 10-question quiz so that you can then read more about it. You can read more about each one, and a lot more interviews I've done on temperament and leadership are on there as well. So it's braddude.com, and all books will link to Amazon, or you can go directly to Amazon and Brad Dude Books, and they'll all come up. So that would be the best way.
Okay. I'll start following your author profile on Amazon. So braddude.com. So great. So Brad, thank you for sharing the journey that you've had in developing, understanding temperament, and those first steps that a person takes when they move from technical person, doer, to their first leadership role.
Mm-hmm.
As you have gone through your journey to where you are now, 6, 7 books is no small feat, no small accomplishment. It's amazing. Would you like to thank somebody and acknowledge them who's helped you along this journey?
Well, what comes to mind for me is a man that his name is Jim White. And I met Jim in 1972 on a tiny island called Rong Rong in the Madro Atoll of the Marshall Islands. And I was there I was a Peace Corps volunteer in the Marshall Islands. And we had every summer new volunteers coming in. And 1972, Jim White came in as the director of the training program for new people. And the training site was Rong Rong. But we used to say, 2 wrong wrongs don't make a right right. But that's just an old, we used to talk to each other that way. And it was my first real training course. And I was the education director or something at that time. So I learned about stand-up training, getting in front of people, trying to identify, and in fact, we were looking at temperament back then without knowing what we were looking at. And we would have to take a boat from Rong Rong, 10-minute boat ride to the next island where there was a elementary school going through summer school, which we would have some teachers. So it was incredible. And then we did it again in 1973, the next summer, kind of the same thing. So Jim and I got to know each other and kept corresponding. And then when I got to do after that more Peace Corps training myself in the role of training director in a variety of places throughout the Pacific and even in the Middle East. And issues that would come up, I could communicate with Jim. He would give me great feedback. And I always appreciated his view of the world of training and of leadership. And eventually, Jim worked for Westinghouse at the time and got me hired there. So I worked in DC for a long time with Jim, and we would co-train at Naval Surface Warfare Center for scientists and engineers at that center. And we did that for almost 10 years, I think. So I got to know Jim very well. Our families got to know each other. We became personal friends. And then he left to join another company. And later I did the same thing with that same company. So we maintained a relationship for over 50 years. And he has recently kind of retired officially from the consulting business and moved to Porto, Portugal, where we're still in contact. And he's now looking into AI and the AI impact on training and on neuroscience and looking at how that impacts learning. So I would say Jim is probably one of the most important person that I really have a lot of gratitude for throughout my career.
Okay, I'm going to ask you some questions.
Mm.
So the SPIRIT, it's a formula basically, method of acknowledgement. It includes specific actions, personal connection, personal characteristics, values, obstacles they had to overcome in order to complete that action, how it impacted you as in metrics, and how is it relevant to your personal values. And then when we talk about the I and the T, the second one is for inclusive, to make it public, influence other people, and T is timely. So when is often we want to thank people as closely as possible. This one's a little more retrospective, so it's a little different. So what specifically did Jim do to help your career?
Jim forced me to get up and do presentations and lead facilitate training groups that I had never done before. So I was breaking that initial barrier back in the early '70s of making myself more vulnerable than I'd ever done before.
Okay. Forced you, encouraged you into a growth
Yes.
zone.
Yeah.
Okay. And how does that reflect on Jim's personality? What did Jim invest in you by doing this?
Jim's temperament is that of a fire. So he was important for him to have fun in trying circumstances. I mean, we were in different locations. In fact, he and I did training for the Steel Authority of India, and we were in India for 6 months together, 4 months together. So under trying conditions, Jim's kept a sense of humor, which I have also. I think our values match there, so that we can look at the funnier and the brighter side of life, even in difficult situations. And it allowed it allowed me to observe him on one-on-one and in group situations, how he dealt with people in trouble, people having a difficult time understanding concepts, difficult time on the job, difficult time with their boss, difficult time dealing with others. And I have incorporated that effort into my own practice.
Okay, let me see if I understand. So for the personal characteristics that he's demonstrating by putting you up on stage and in a growth zone is the commitment to levity, to allowing some element of vulnerability as you observe his growth as well. Is that
Sure.
what
Sure.
you're saying?
His growth, and as he did that, and the more we worked together, I tried to do the same thing. So it impacted that vulnerability, his his way of sensitivity to others, understanding and trying to spend time with others to really understand their personal issues. I've tried to incorporate that same into my own practice. So yes.
Okay. And how did that impact your career?
Well, I would say that doing those kinds of strategies and using that kind of approach achieved success in doing a variety of, really hundreds of training programs all over the world. I was lucky to do that in over 30 countries for a variety of government as well as private sector clients. So I think, it bred success, I think, in my career. I think if it wasn't working, if I wasn't as sensitive as Jim was to participants in my training programs, the evaluation would not have been as good, and therefore I would not have been hired to do more. So I always felt that was an important aspect of success in my in the consulting world.
Okay. And then relevance. So I think maybe you mentioned relevance when you were talking earlier, but how does his impact, the work that he did helping you develop and this consistent cycle of feedback throughout your career, how is that reflected in your personal value system?
I think it developed it. I think that I didn't borrow anything any value that he had. I think it brought out and allowed me to develop my own values even more.
Okay.
It allowed me to grow in a lot of different areas that probably I would not have done otherwise. I would, if I was just on my own and didn't have
Mhm.
Jim's influence. So, and I think it's reflected, especially in my writing. I think a lot of the books that I've the 6 books directly on leadership and temperament and its application came a lot from the work that Jim and I did together and the observable behavior from him that I saw. I've tried to incorporate that.
Okay. Do you mind if I try to put all of this together succinctly?
Sure, but please do.
You're gonna make it hard today. So Jim, thank you for the help and the development that you gave Brad. You took a chance on him in those early years and you saw something special and put him up on stage to facilitate trainings. But you didn't stop there. You continued to give feedback and allowed him to be a part of your training system so that he could learn from you. And I understand that that is an element of time, the emotional burden, and also the vulnerability associated with having somebody be a part of your development system as well. It's impacted Brad because he's been able to travel to over 30 regions in the world. He's had an incredibly successful career working with NASA and other military supported leadership programs. He's been able to write 6 leadership books plus another book that's come out recently. And all of that has been made more excellent because of your constant friendship, feedback, and guidance. It reflects on Brad as he has been able to develop his own personal value system and work in a way that reflects that out or shines that out to the world.
Well, Dr. Buckley, you took the words right out of my mouth.
No, you put them there. So it's
That,
great material to work with.
oh, thank you very much. That was wonderful, and it does reflect exactly what I felt about Jim.
How do I have, if you don't mind, how do you feel when you hear it all put together succinctly?
Jim used to, in his leadership classes, used to say, in terms of our feelings, there were 4: mad, sad, glad, or scared, and
Okay.
everything falls into those categories. And so I am certainly glad. My feeling is glad to hear you put it all together like that. And I wonder why I didn't do the same thing myself and make it a little bit more succinct as I tried to answer your questions. So I really appreciate that.
You are not the only one. It is interesting, especially those closest to us. We have a hard time discerning, I think. I see it with going through this process with many people. Those who are closest, we have the hardest time putting a finger on how they've truly, truly impacted us. So
Yeah,
you gave me the words. Right. I didn't make anything up.
Yeah, I agree with you. And those closest to us, it's oftentimes it's there so strongly, their presence and their impact on us, that we don't often stop and kind of think about it in specific terms. We assume that it's always going to be there, and
Yes.
oftentimes we take it. Obviously, we take it for granted. But in addition to colleagues, but we have our spouses or our significant others. It's the same way. We just expect that strong support to be there, no matter what we do or crazy thing that we try to accomplish, and that has a big impact on us. No question about it.
Brad, I've really enjoyed speaking with you, hearing your experience, learning more about temperament, and I'm excited to add your links, braddude.com. It will be in the blog, and it will be tied to all of the things associated with this particular episode.
Right.
So I look forward to talking to you again in the future.
I appreciate that, Dr. Buckley. It was a pleasure, and I really enjoyed our time together.
Thank you. Have a great weekend.
You too.
Thank you for joining us on Voices in Leadership, where leaders who connect, inspire, and grow share their stories. I look forward to welcoming you back to our next conversation. In the meantime, visit www.voicesinleadership.live to access show notes, links, and to subscribe and stay connected. And in the spirit of gratitude, let's remember to thank one person near you. Until next time, this is Dr. Angela J. Buckley signing off.